The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the modest suburban home, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where the Carter family bustled through their daily routine. Paul Carter, 38, a gentle-voiced man with laugh lines and kind eyes, flipped pancakes with one hand and packed his daughter Lily's lunchbox with the other. Lily, 10 years old, full of life and curiosity, sat at the table with her sketch pad, humming to herself and drawing while waiting for breakfast. Melissa Carter, Paul's wife, stood by the counter sipping coffee, eyes fixed on her phone. She scrolled endlessly, replying to messages with a faint smile that faded when Paul turned to her. "Pancake mountain for my princess," Paul said cheerfully, placing a plate in front of Lily. She giggled and gave him a syrupy hug. "You spoil her," Melissa said with a half-hearted chuckle, still not looking up from her screen. Paul approached Melissa, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and glanced at her phone screen. She tilted it away, just slightly, subtly, but enough to register in the back of his mind. He smiled anyway. "Any big plans today?" he asked. "Just errands, and I might stop by the bookstore." Her answer was automatic, her tone neutral. Paul didn't press. "All right, I'll pick Lily up at 3, okay?" He bent down and kissed Lily's head. "Love you, monkey." "Love you more," Lily beamed. Later at work, Paul chatted in the break room with Alex Morgan, his colleague and close friend. Alex, confident and charming, had joined the company 2 years ago and quickly bonded with Paul. They often worked side by side on projects and had become known as an efficient duo. "So, Melissa made those lemon squares again?" Alex asked, reaching for one from the container Paul brought. "Yep, told her you love them." She was flattered. Paul chuckled, sipping his coffee. Alex smiled. "She's sweet." "She is. We've had our ups and downs like everyone else, but she's been solid. Always there, you know." Paul's eyes softened. "I'm lucky." Alex gave a polite nod, their smile tight, almost forced. Paul didn't notice. That night, after Lily was tucked into bed and Paul had dozed off watching TV on the couch, Melissa sat alone in the dining room. Her phone lit up repeatedly. A slight smile played on her lips as she typed quickly, her fingers moving with urgency. From a hallway, Lily's small face peeked around the corner. She rubbed her eyes, having woken up to use the bathroom. She stood still, quietly watching her mother, not just texting, but giggling softly, eyes glowing in the light of the screen. "Mom!" Lily's voice startled Melissa. Melissa quickly turned the phone over. "Sweetheart, what are you doing up?" "I had a bad dream," Lily said, walking into the room. Melissa rose, quickly tucking her phone into her robe pocket. "Come on, let's get you back to bed." As they walked back to the bedroom, Lily looked up and asked, "Were you talking to someone?" Melissa hesitated. "Just an old friend. Nothing important." But Lily frowned as she crawled back under the sheets. Something about her mother's voice didn't feel right. In the hallway, Melissa stared at her darkened phone screen for a moment, then returned to the dining table, where another message was already waiting. "I miss you. I hate pretending." It was a slow Thursday afternoon at the office, the kind Paul welcomed. With most of the week's tasks wrapped up ahead of schedule, he decided to leave work an hour early, a rare treat. On the way home, he stopped by the florist near the corner of Main Street and picked up a bouquet of Melissa's favorite, white tulips. He smiled as he imagined the look on her face. Things had felt off lately, sure, but maybe this little surprise could bring back some warmth. They just needed time together, that's all. He hummed to himself on the drive home, picturing dinner plans and a quiet night after Lily went to bed. The sun was just beginning to set as he pulled into the driveway, the familiar silhouette of their 2-story home bathed in orange light. He noticed Melissa's car parked out front, but something about the second car, one that looked vaguely familiar, made him pause. Paul entered quietly, tulips in hand. "Melissa," he called, walking through the living room. No answer. He moved toward the kitchen, then paused. Faint sounds, laughter, a hushed voice, drifted from the upstairs bedroom. Curious and a bit amused, Paul tiptoed up the stairs. Maybe she was on a call? But the moment he reached the landing, his heart dropped. Through the slightly ajar bedroom door, he saw Melissa, his wife, entangled in an intimate embrace. With Alex. Paul froze. The bouquet slipped from his hands, scattering petals across the hardwood floor. Melissa gasped. Alex sprang back, guilt and panic written all over their face. Paul, wait. What the hell is this? Paul's voice cracked, stunned and rising. You're, both of you. How long has this been going on? Melissa struggled to speak, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for the right lie and couldn't find it. Paul turned to Alex, his eyes blazing. You were my friend, my co-worker. I trusted you. Alex raised both hands, stepping forward cautiously. Paul, please. Just calm down. It's not what you think. Don't you dare play that card with me. Paul snapped. You've been sleeping with my wife under my roof. Around my daughter. Melissa flinched. Paul's voice shook with fury and betrayal. You think this is just about you two? Lily lives here. She deserves better than this, than lies and sneaking around. Melissa's composure broke. We didn't mean to hurt you, Paul. I didn't expect. She stopped herself. Alex looked at her, then at Paul. You're not thinking straight. If you go to the police, or tell anyone, it'll ruin all of us. Paul narrowed his eyes. So what? Actions have consequences. And trust me, I will protect my daughter from whatever this is. Silence felt like a weight in the room. Then Alex's expression changed. The panic in their eyes flickered into something darker, calculating. They stepped closer to Melissa and whispered, just loud enough for Paul to hear. We can't let him destroy everything. Paul blinked. What did you just say? Melissa looked at Alex, stunned. Alex, no. He's going to take Lily. He's going to tear your life apart. Alex said, voice low and urgent. We need to handle this before it spirals. Paul stepped back, sensing something he couldn't fully grasp but instinctively feared. What do you mean, handle? Alex didn't answer. And in that moment, Paul knew this wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was something far more dangerous. Melissa sat in the dimly lit living room, her fingers curled tightly around a cold glass of water she hadn't sipped in over an hour. The house was too quiet. Even the ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual. Alex paced restlessly, their boots thudding softly on the carpet, their mind replaying the confrontation from earlier like a broken film reel. He's going to ruin everything, Alex murmured again, running a hand through their hair. If he talks, we lose it all. Melissa didn't respond at first. Her eyes were locked on a photo across the room. One of Paul holding Lily at the beach, their faces beaming in the sunlight. Her throat tightened. He said he'd protect Lily, she whispered. He won't hurt her. But he'll take her, Alex said, stopping in front of her. He'll go to court, claim you're unstable, unfaithful. He'll win. You know he will. Melissa closed her eyes. The walls felt like they were closing in. So what do we do? Alex's gaze darkened. We talked to him. One last time. Get him to understand, or make him understand. The next evening, Paul returned home reluctantly after a series of tense, unanswered messages from Melissa. She'd asked him to come by the house after Lily had gone to a sleepover at her friend's. So they needed to talk, really talk. For Lily's sake. When he stepped inside, the house felt different. Melissa stood by the fireplace, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Alex sat on the edge of the couch, quiet, unreadable. Paul stayed near the door. What's this? Another trap? No, Melissa said quickly. Just a conversation. Please. Reluctantly, Paul stepped forward, the weight of betrayal still heavy on his shoulders. The discussion started calm, Melissa expressing regret, Alex trying to mediate, but it quickly devolved into raised voices and accusations. Paul couldn't take the falseness of it all. You two think you can play house while destroying mine? He barked. You don't get to rewrite this story. I won't let you. Will you turn to leave? Alex stood. Paul, just listen. Don't touch me. Paul shoved Alex back. The room exploded in chaos. Melissa lunged to separate them. In the struggle, Paul pushed Alex against the wall, and Alex retaliated with a punch to his ribs. Melissa screamed, trying to pull them apart. Then it happened. A misstep, a shove, a sickening crack as Paul's body crashed down the staircase, limp by the time he hit the bottom. His head struck the final step with a thud that echoed through the silence that followed. Melissa stood frozen at the top of the stairs, her hands trembling. Oh my God! Paul! No answer. No movement. Alex stood beside her, breathing hard. He fell. Melissa ran down, knelt by him, her shaking fingers reaching for a pulse that wasn't there. "He's dead," she whispered, her voice hollow. It hadn't been the plan. Not really. Not murder. But now, with his lifeless body at her feet, Melissa knew there was no turning back. They began cleaning in silence, wiping blood off the steps, trying to process what they'd done. Then a creak. Both turned toward the stairs. Lily stood halfway down, her small hands gripping the banister, her wide eyes fixed on her father's body. She had seen everything. Melissa's breath caught in her throat. "Lily," she whispered, but her daughter didn't move, didn't blink. Only fear remained in her eyes. And suddenly, the horror of what came next was far worse than anything Melissa had imagined. Lily's scream echoed for only a second before she turned and bolted up the stairs. Her small feet pounded against the wooden steps, the sound sharp and frantic. Melissa started after her instinctively, but Alex grabbed her arm. "Let her go for a moment," Alex said, voice eerily calm. "What?" Melissa's voice trembled. "She just saw her father die. She saw us." Alex's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Exactly. And she's 10. She's scared. She's not going to understand what happened. You know what she's going to do? She's going to tell someone. Anyone." Melissa pulled away, shaking her head. No. She's a child, Alex. She's my daughter. She's a witness," Alex said bluntly. "Do you want to go to prison? Do you want her growing up in foster care with strangers? Because that's what will happen." Melissa's knees buckled, and she sank onto the bottom step, her mind unraveling in real time. Tears streamed down her face, her breath coming in uneven gasps. She could still see Paul's body, limp, broken, just feet away from her. But Lily? Sweet, wide-eyed Lily. "She's my baby," she whispered. Upstairs, a door slammed shut. The sound jolted them both. "She's hiding," Alex said quietly. "You need to talk to her. Calm her down. Convince her it was an accident or something. Just keep her quiet." Melissa got to her feet slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Her limbs felt heavy, like she was moving underwater. The hallway seemed longer than usual as she reached Lily's room. The door was locked. "Lily," she said softly, gently. "It's Mommy. Can you open the door, sweetheart?" No answer. She tried again, knocking lightly. "Please, baby. Everything's okay now. I promise. Mommy just wants to talk." Inside, Lily huddled in the corner between her bed and the wall, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly against her chest. Her face was wet with tears, her breath short and panicked. She had never seen so much blood, never heard her mom scream like that, never seen her dad so still. "I won't tell anyone, Mommy," she whispered through the door. "I promise I won't say anything." Melissa's heart shattered. "Lily, I know you're scared, but it's all going to be okay. You trust Mommy, don't you?" Lily nodded silently, though Melissa couldn't see it. "I trust you," she said softly. Melissa's hand rested on the doorknob. She had half a mind to run, grab Lily, call the police, confess, something. But then Alex appeared behind her, holding something hidden in their sleeve, their face set like stone. "Now, Melissa," they said, quiet but firm. "Now or never." What happened next was not shown, not heard, only felt. Downstairs, the once warm glow of the family home had turned dim and cold. The bouquet of white tulips still lay scattered on the floor, their petals wilted and bruised, like innocence lost. Melissa emerged minutes later, her face pale, her eyes hollow. "She's gone," she said, almost to herself. Alex nodded once. "There's no going back now." And in that moment, whatever remained of Melissa, the mother, the wife, the person, was gone too. The night after the murders was long, cold, and agonizingly quiet. Melissa sat in Lily's room, her eyes red and dry, staring at the pink walls adorned with crayon drawings and fairy stickers. The little bed remained untouched, neatly made, a cruel contrast to the horrors that had unfolded only hours earlier. A faint scent of lavender from Lily's shampoo lingered in the air. It was suffocating. Downstairs, Alex moved methodically. "We have to finish this tonight," they said flatly, tossing Paul's phone into a bucket of bleach before wiping down every surface they could remember him touching. "We'll make it look like he took Lily and ran. Like he snapped." Melissa barely responded, her body moving on autopilot as they worked together. They dragged Paul's body into his car, placed Lily's small backpack in the back seat, and drove it to a nearby nature reserve known for dense woods and deep ravines. They pushed the car off a hidden slope, watching as it tumbled into shadows, crashing silently into the thicket below. They returned to the house, burned the clothes they had worn, erased digital footprints, and set up a carefully curated scene. Signs of a sudden departure, drawers open, Lily's favorite toy missing, as if taken on the run. By morning, Melissa sat inside the local police station, tears streaming down her face. "My husband took my daughter," she sobbed. He was upset. He wasn't thinking straight. Please find them." The media picked up the story quickly. Melissa stood on her porch, surrounded by cameras, clutching a framed photo of Lily. Her voice trembled as she addressed the public. "Paul, if you see this, please bring her home. Lily needs help. I forgive you, just come home." Her performance was heartbreakingly believable, because somewhere deep inside, she wasn't pretending. She wanted Lily to come home. She wanted to rewind time, undo the choices, the betrayal, the horror. But time was merciless. As days passed, cracks began to spread through the thin ice of her composure. Melissa would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced she heard Lily calling for her. Sometimes it was a whisper, sometimes a scream. She'd run down the hall, throw open the bedroom door, only to find the room empty, still and cold. Worse, she began to see Paul, at the edge of her vision, in mirrors standing across the street in crowds. Once, while brushing her teeth, she swore she saw his reflection behind her, bloodied, staring silently. She dropped the toothbrush and collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Alex, meanwhile, grew colder, more calculated. "You're unraveling." They snapped one evening when Melissa admitted to hearing Lily's voice again. "She said she forgave me," Melissa whispered, her voice hollow. "She sounded like she used to, before I ruined everything." Alex grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look them in the eyes. "You need to hold it together. We did what we had to do. There's no changing it now." Melissa nodded, but her expression was empty, as if her soul had detached, hovering somewhere in the silence between grief and guilt. Together, they had buried the truth, but it was already beginning to rot beneath the surface. Detective Sarah Lawson had been in homicide for nearly 12 years, and though the Pauls case was being handled as a missing person situation, something didn't sit right with her. She reviewed the files for the third time that week. Melissa Carter, 35, reported her husband, Paul Carter, and their 10-year-old daughter, Lily, missing. She claimed Paul had been increasingly stressed, irrational, and may have fled with Lily after a heated argument. But nothing in Paul's background supported that narrative. Sarah sat in her office, flipping through Paul's personnel records, texts, and credit card statements. No signs of erratic behavior. No money pulled from savings. No getaway tickets. No prior history of violence. Not even so much as a parking ticket. And then there was Lily. Everyone Sarah spoke to, Paul's colleagues, his barber, even Lily's school teacher, spoke about how deeply he adored his daughter. He walked her to school every morning, volunteered for field trips, brought cupcakes on her birthday. One teacher, Miss Elkins, had said with tears in her eyes, "Paul lived for that little girl." Sarah's instincts told her people like Paul didn't just run. The more she pulled, the more the thread began to unravel. She started by reviewing traffic and security footage from the neighborhood. Most homes didn't have cameras aimed at the street, but one neighbor, a tech-savvy retiree named Mr. Donahue, had a Ring doorbell camera with motion sensitivity that faced the Carter residence. "Probably just captured raccoons," Donahue joked, handing Sarah a USB drive. "But feel free to take a look." The footage was grainy but clear enough. On the night Paul and Lily supposedly disappeared, a car was captured pulling into the Carter driveway around 11:40 p.m. Odd, considering Melissa claimed Paul had left with Lily around 9 p.m. Even more curious, Sarah recognized the car. A quick check with the DMV confirmed it belonged to Alex Monroe, Paul's colleague. That led Sarah back to Paul's office, where she conducted a casual interview with Alex. The conversation was polite, but Sarah noticed a few things. Alex was evasive about the timeline, stumbled over details, and seemed far too rehearsed. "You and Paul were close, weren't you?" Sarah asked, voice calm. "Yes," Alex nodded. "We worked side by side for 3 years. He was a good guy, and yet you didn't attend the press vigil for him and Lily?" Alex hesitated. I didn't want the attention. I prefer to grieve privately." Sarah smiled gently, but marked it down. People grieve differently, sure, but something about Alex's cool detachment didn't feel right. Later, back at the precinct, Sarah cross-referenced the footage, timestamps, and cell tower data. Paul's phone last pinged just blocks from their home, after Melissa claimed he had taken Lily and driven off. And then it went dark. No outgoing calls. No texts. As if the phone had been destroyed. She ran her fingers through her hair, the case beginning to darken. A father deeply devoted to his daughter vanishes without a trace, but his last location contradicts his wife's story. A friend's car is seen at their home at suspicious hours. And Melissa, tearful on camera, but inconsistent in private interviews. There was no physical evidence yet, no bodies, no crime scene. But in Sarah's mind, the puzzle pieces were clicking into place. She sat back in her chair, staring at the board where Paul and Lily's photos hung side by side. "I don't think they ran," she murmured. "I think someone made them disappear. And now, she just needed to prove it." Melissa sat in the small, windowless interview room at the police station, her fingers trembling as she clutched a tissue. Across from her, Detective Sarah Lawson observed silently, her eyes sharp and unreadable. The silence between them was thick, pressing in like fog, the kind that made people talk. "We're just trying to understand what happened, Melissa," Sarah said gently, flipping through a folder. "You said Paul was unstable, angry, but everyone we've spoken to paints a very different picture. Kind, devoted, especially to Lily." Melissa's lips twitched. "You didn't live with him. You don't know what he was like behind closed doors. Then help me understand. Did he ever hurt you? Or Lily?" There was a pause. Too long. Melissa's eyes darted toward the door. Sarah leaned forward. "You're not under arrest. But things aren't adding up. There's footage of Alex's car outside your house the night Paul and Lily disappeared. And cell data shows Paul never left the area. Can you explain that?" The tissue twisted tighter in Melissa's hands, now damp. "Alex, he came to help. Paul was yelling. He was out of control. I didn't know what else to do." Sarah didn't respond. She just stared. Melissa cracked. "I didn't kill him," she burst out. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way. He pushed first. He found out. He was going to take Lily away from me." Sarah's eyebrows arched slightly. "He found out? About what?" But Melissa had already realized her slip. Her face went pale, eyes wide. "I want a lawyer," she whispered. Back at home, Alex was calmly packing a suitcase. Their demeanor was cool, focused. Flight booked under a different name. Cash withdrawn over several days to avoid suspicion. Everything was set. They looked at their phone, burner messages typed and ready to send. A final touch. They opened a laptop and uploaded a set of screenshots, text forged with a message generator, complete with Melissa's profile photo. The messages painted a picture. Melissa had been obsessed with Alex, furious that Paul suspected an affair, terrified of losing Lily. One message read, "If I can't have Lily, no one will. He doesn't deserve her." Alex sent them to an anonymous email account they had created just days before, then forwarded them, along with a fake confession note, to an investigator tip line. By the time the sun had set, Melissa was back home, shaken, paranoid, pacing the living room. She tried calling Alex. No answer. She texted. No reply. Then she drove to Alex's apartment. Empty. Clean. Like no one had ever lived there. Her stomach turned. A creeping realization dawned. A sickening clarity. Alex wasn't coming back. That night, Detective Lawson received the anonymous tip. She reviewed the emails and forged messages with a grim face. The texts, paired with Melissa's emotional outburst during the interview, were damning. The next morning, police cars surrounded Melissa's home. She was on the porch when they arrived, her hands stained with dirt. She had been in the garden, desperately digging, searching for anything Alex might have left behind. Melissa Carter, one officer said, stepping forward. "You're under arrest for the suspected murder of Paul Carter and Lily Carter." Melissa stood frozen, lips trembling. No, this isn't right. "I didn't, Alex," but the cuffs clicked around her wrists. As she was led away, she looked at the neighbors standing silently across the street, eyes full of judgment. The same porch where she had cried for the cameras just weeks ago now became the stage for her public downfall. Inside the police car, Melissa screamed, "You don't understand. It was Alex. They tricked me. I didn't want any of this." But her cries were drowned out by the sound of the engines starting and the whispers of justice slowly closing in. Melissa sat in the cold, gray-walled interrogation room for the second time in 2 weeks, but this time, it wasn't just an interview. She was wearing a jumpsuit, her wrists in cuffs. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair disheveled. The composure she once wore like armor had been stripped away. She looked like a ghost of the woman who once smiled for cameras, pleading for her missing husband and daughter to come home. Detective Sarah Lawson entered with a file in hand and a wary look in her eyes. She'd seen people lie. She'd seen killers cry. But there was something off here. Something too neat. Too clean. It gnawed at her. "You were right about one thing," Sarah began, placing a few photos on the table. "Paul didn't deserve what happened to him." Melissa's gaze dropped. Her voice, barely a whisper, cracked. "I didn't mean to, wasn't supposed to." "Lily," she broke down again, sobbing, incoherent. Sarah let the silence hang before continuing. "These messages you supposedly sent," she said, tapping the printed screenshots, "they feel rehearsed. Staged." Melissa's head shot up. "Because I didn't send them. Alex set me up. I swear." Sarah studied her. It could have been desperation or truth. She nodded slowly. "Let's talk about Alex." Melissa told her everything about the affair, the night Paul died, how Lily saw it all, how guilt had eaten her alive, but Alex pushed her to bury it, to lie, to pretend. How Alex had promised to stay, to protect her, then vanished. Framed her. "I know it sounds crazy," Melissa said, "but Alex planned everything once Paul found out. They used me." Outside the room, Sarah reviewed digital forensics with her tech team. "Something's wrong with the metadata," one analyst told her. "These screenshots were created with a generator. You can see the mismatched font rendering and timestamp inconsistencies." Now the case shifted. Within 48 hours, an arrest warrant was issued for Alex Monroe, or rather, the person formerly known as Alex Monroe. Their real identity was Alyssa Morgan, a woman who had transitioned years earlier and left behind a web of aliases across state lines. She had a history of manipulation, identity changes, and suspected fraud, but no previous convictions. This was her darkest turn yet. With Melissa's cooperation and the new digital evidence, police were able to track a burner phone Alex had used, leading them to a small motel 2 states away. But when the SWAT team arrived, the room was empty. A suitcase open, cash missing, clothes gone. A note was left on the bed. "We did what we had to, but I'm not going down for her mistakes." Back in custody, Melissa was offered a plea deal, voluntary manslaughter, in exchange for her testimony against Alex and full disclosure of the crimes. It wouldn't bring Paul or Lily back. Nothing would. But the legal system offered structure. Accountability. Melissa took the deal, confessing in open court. The room was packed. News crews, former friends, parents from Lily's school. The silence after her statement was suffocating. No tears left to shed. Only shame. Alex remained on the run. Months passed. A warrant circulated nationally. Alex became a ghost, surfacing only occasionally through ATM camera footage or secondhand sightings. Some believed she'd left the country. Others whispered she was hiding in plain sight, reinvented once again. Melissa, now serving her sentence, was a shell of who she had once been. Her days spent in therapy sessions and silent meals, haunted not just by what she'd done, but by how she allowed herself to be manipulated so far beyond redemption. Detective Lawson closed the case file and stared at Lily's photo for a long time that evening. A child caught in a web of secrets, selfishness, and betrayal. There were no winners,